Alright, today we're going to do an in-depth tutorial of Roblox Studios for beginners or anyone new to making games. I see a lot of other devs doing tutorials like this, but I feel like they always miss something, so I'm going to try to go as in-depth as I can while keeping the video relatively short, because I know long videos can get boring. But, alright, when you open Studios, this is what you're met with right here. This is the new tab. On the left side, you can see all your tabs. Up top, you have Get Started. This is Tutorials and Studio Tour. I recommend doing these. They're very handy. But usually you're met with this. You have your themed base plates, and then your three main base plates. You have base plate, classic base plate, which is classic Roblox style, and grassy flat terrain. Let's hop into the base plate actually though. So you're met with this screen right here. Oh, those are my plugins. You're met with this screen right here. The viewport to move around is just WASD and right mouse button. You can use the scroll wheel to zoom, and then obviously left mouse button is click and box select. So on the right hand side you have the Explorer and the Properties tab. If you don't have these open, go to View, and there are two big buttons on the very left hand side, Explorer and Properties. Go ahead and open those. But I recommend always keeping these open. These are the main two ones that you use. Explorer is everything in your game. So you have your workspace, which is all the physical objects like the terrain, camera, spawn location, and base plate. You obviously have your lighting, which is all the things that make your game look good, basically. And then starter player is your player's scripts. Teams is your team scripts and all your team stuff. Starter GUI and starter pack. Starter GUI is the main one you use along with replicated storage and server script service and server storage. Not sure about replicated first, I don't use that one too much, but yeah, so starter GUI is where you keep all your UI and main scripts. Starter pack is where you keep all the player's items. So like when you spawn into game and you have, let's say, a hammer in your hand, that will be in starter pack over here. And sound service and text chat service are self-explanatory. If you want to open any of these folders, there will be a little arrow on the side. If there's not, that means there's nothing inside of the folder or area. That means they're empty. So say you wanted to open this, but there's no arrow. That means it's empty. And if I enter screen GUI, then you can see it has an arrow and I can open it now. But if you want to add things to folders, you just hover over the one you want to add something to. Say I want to add a part to workspace. I would click the little plus and click on part, and there it is, right there. You can see I have a part. Alright. So that's the Explorer. Next is the Properties tab. This is right underneath Explorer. It's just the properties of the object or item or script or folder. It's the properties of whatever you're selecting. So I'm selecting this brick, you can see by the blue outline around it. And I can choose color, reflectance, transparency, name, parent, size, position, if you can touch it or not, if it's anchored, all sorts of fun stuff. But this is where you're going to find the main stuff you use to customize and change things about whatever you're selecting. Alright, so then up top you have all of these different tabs. I'll go over each of them, but I'm going to start in the home. This is the main one you'll use other than, I want to say, model and view. So up here You can see I have this selected. What if I want to move it up, alright? If you want to move up, if you just try to drag and click, you'll see it won't go up. So what you do is come up here to move, and then you can move it on each of these axes, whatever you call them, you know. Then you have scale tool, you can scale it to the size you want, and rotate. You can rotate it. And then say you're trying to get it perfectly on the ground, but you can't because it's not too easy. Up here right on the right hand side of rotate, underneath the tools section, there's a little button called collisions. Go ahead and check that, and then you'll see you can't move it through the floor, and you can set it directly on it because collisions are turned on. The parts can now collide instead of just going through each other. Collisions is really handy. You don't really mess with join surfaces or the mode, but then next you have the terrain editor. So you can see it's under this little terrain area. Click on terrain editor, it pops up with this little tab. You can close the tab by clicking the X, but we're going to go ahead and keep it open. You have clear, import, and generate. You don't mess with these too much unless you want a quick, massive, vast landscape. But you're going to have to mess with it a lot to get it the way you like, I've found. You just click over to the edit side, and this is what I use. It has draw, fill, transform, sculpt, flatten, paint. It's like if you've ever used Blender, which I'm sure a lot of you have, it's basically sculpt mode in Blender, or just like sculpting with clay. You have draw. When you click on draw, it opens up these little brush settings and material settings. I could go, I want my landscape to be square, and then I'll change the size, and then we'll make it rock. Alright, and then you just draw. It's that simple. And there we have a big old square. And if you have a massive amount of landscape, you can always use the fill tool, which is basically the same. It brings up this cube. You can scale the cube to the size you want, scroll down on the bottom, select your material, and click apply. And then there you go. You have a quick and easy cube of pavement. And then if you want to paint it a different color, say you're not happy with this, you wanted a different texture, but you like the shape, you can come into the paint mode. Say I want it to be concrete. I can just brush over it and make it concrete. Like I said, easy peasy. It works on every material, just like that. You have smooth, which is where you smooth out. You have flatten, which is where you flatten objects. See, I can flatten all this out. Just like that. Sculpt, it's kind of the opposite of flatten. Sea level is just to fix the sea level. You don't mess with that too much unless you're doing a lot with water. But yeah, that's the terrain editor. And then next you have the insert area. This is where you'll find your toolbox, which has all of these free models. Very fun. Next to that, you have your insert part. You can insert your standard cube, but say you don't want a cube, say you want a cylinder. Then you just click the drop down tab, and there's a cylinder. So you have block, sphere, wedge, corner wedge, and cylinder. It comes in handy, you'll use it a lot. But then you have UI, which just takes you over to the little UI tab over here. I'm not sure why it pops up. It just does. Why they just don't have it there, I don't know. But yeah, you have your screen GUI, and you can just click and add a frame to that. Let's make it a rectangle, and let's add a text label. You can tell when you're centered by these green dotted lines. Those come in handy. But if you want to change the text, you come over here to the Properties tab, because the Properties tab is where we find all of our details about what we're selected on. Scroll down, you see there's a little text area. You can change the font. So say we don't like the font, we can change it to that. Rich text if you want. Text color, let's make it blue. Just like that. You see it's blue. Then text scaled makes it scale and fit to the little box that it's inside of. You can find the text right here. You just click on it and write whatever you want. Oh, that's not. Just like that. That's how you mess with those. You can get tutorials for more in-depth stuff when it comes to UI. I don't mess with UI too much. It's not my thing. I use it when I have to. But then next you have the import 3D file. You won't touch this too much unless you're importing something from Blender. Yeah, you won't touch it too much. It's just to import 3D meshes and textures and all that. Material Manager. Alright, so this is under the Edit section. Make sure you're on Select Mode to select items. But then you click Material Manager, and it brings up this little window with all sorts of textures. Say we want to make this cube marble. Alright, then you can just select the texture you want and click the little button next to it to use it. Just like that. Same goes for color. You can just change the color of a part in here. Just like that, we have a green rectangle. And then over here, you have group, lock, and anchor. Anchor, you want to anchor every single part that you want to stay in place. So we want this to stay where it is, so we're going to anchor it, right? If you don't have it anchored, see, this isn't anchored. If we move that up and spawn in, it's going to fall to the ground because it's not anchored. Anchoring objects is basically locking the objects in place. You see, now this moves because it's not anchored. You can kick it around a bit. And then over here, this one is anchored, so we can't move it, and it just stays in place. So you want to make sure you anchor every single part. It's very important. But then next you have your test area. This is just play, resume, stop. Very self-explanatory. Game settings. If you want to save your game, you can either come all the way up here to File and Save, or Save to Roblox, or Publish to Roblox. It's an easier way is just Game Settings and then click Save to Roblox. Then you can name your game. You can add a description. This is my test world. You can choose the creator, like a group or just you, the genre, you have all your genres, and what it's playable on. Then you click save, and just like that, your game is saved. It will reload your world, so don't worry, everything is saved, so it'll still be there. Just like that. Alright, yep, see, everything is still here. So, team test is when you're making a game with people and you all want to test at the same time. You click team test. Same goes for exit. But that's everything in the home. Next is model. It's all the same stuff. You have transform. Transform is like a more I want to say like advanced way to edit your models and meshes. You still have collisions and join, but say you're not happy with it being able to move freely. Say you want it to snap on a grid. Then you come over to the snap to the grid section and check move. So then you're snapping every one stud to get a more advanced way to move. Same goes with rotate, snap rotate. I always keep on. Yeah, but then you have edit pivot. Okay, this one is very important for me, at least. Say you have a part that's like this, and you want to move it directly across the Z axis. You can see up here you have Z. You want to move it directly across, but you can only move it like this. Alright? This is when you edit the pivot. If you click edit pivot, you can rotate these little guideline things and move them around, and then when you go back to move, you can move it along that axis. Next is align tool. This is, yeah, it literally tells you what it is. You have the part, material, generator. This you have to enable in File, Studio Settings, or Beta Features. All this is AI texture generator, anchor, lock, group. Grouping is pretty self-explanatory. If you want these to be the same model, basically, you would control click, and then you would click group. Now these two are grouped. You can see over in the Explorer, if you open it, you have both of these parts and they're grouped as one model now. We can rename this Sill and Square. Alright. Next you have union, intersect, negate, and separate. You won't use negate and separate a lot. Union, intersect, sure, if you want. Let's go ahead and ungroup those. Union, you can only union the parts that are in this. You can't union meshes or custom parts. So we union those together, and those are now one object. See, it says union, they're unioned as one object. They're negative part now. Separate, and they're back to being a union. Constraints, these are like rope constraints, spring constraints, all sorts of things. You won't touch those too much. Effects, you have explosion, fire. We can add in an effect to that. See, now there's fire coming from it. Can just, yeah, see, there's some fire inside of it. Spawn just spawns another spawn plate. Advanced, insert object, model, service, collision groups. You won't touch this too much. And then next we have avatar. Avatar is accessory fitting tools, import 3D, rig builder. I can spawn in my avatar just like that. Avatar setup. Yeah, it's like that. It's like customizing your avatar basically. Animation editor. This is where you'll do 90% of animations. You can do animations in Blender, but you just click on the thing you want to animate. We'll name this wave. You can click on the part that you want to rotate, move it just a little bit. It's kind of like stop motion. Move the keyframe up one, and you just keep doing this. Then you go back down. And you'll see in a minute when I play, it will be quite fast. I'll show you how to change that. Just put it back down to normal. So when we play, you can see it's very fast. This shows you over here what you've been moving You have play, fast forward. But over all the way on the right over here, you have a little gear. Click on that, and you can choose the frame rate, the playback speed. We're going to put that at 25. So now it's slow. You can show the events, snap mode, rotation type, angles, all that fun stuff. But yeah, that's the basics of the animation editor. For anything to be animatable, it has to have a humanoid inside of it. So you can see this is called rig. So we go over to the Explorer, we find rig, open that up. It has a humanoid, that's good. It also has to have a rig inside it. A rig is basically the bones or the armature to make it movable. If it doesn't have bones, then it's just kind of a pile of parts that doesn't know what it is. So a rig basically makes the outline of the human. You'll have the neck, the torso, legs, and then you move the bones. And since the bones are welded to the mesh, it will move the mesh too, basically. But on to test. Test is just all the start stuff. You got device, player, audio. It's not too important. View. View is where you open up all of your tabs. Okay? So you see Explorer, Properties. These are up here. You can close these and open them back up. You have Chat, breakpoints, all of that. Got script performance. You can test wind direction. You can make it full screen. You can screenshot, record videos in here. If you have UI on the screen that's in the way of you building, you can click UI visibility and it will make it invisible. Grid material, you can show the grid. There's wireframe rendering. Don't use that too much. But yeah, you have stats, network, render, physics, all that. You don't touch that really much. You don't touch a lot of this stuff unless you actually really need it. But then last you have plugins. A lot of these are just random stuff that I use that I find handy. Plugins are basically tools that people make to help you build your game and stuff like that. You have texture plugins, you have rope plugins, part to terrain, a grass fixer, gap fill, a rig maker, 3D text, pipe maker, mesh optimization, all sorts of stuff. If you want to churn off plugins, you just go over to tools and manage plugins, and you can see they have all sorts of different enableable tags. You can churn on and off. So then you see they're up here now. Just like that. And then you can do the plugins folder to manage them that way too. But yeah, that's all of the tabs and stuff in here. And last you have collaborate and file. So if you want to make it so, oh, my dog's going crazy. If you want to make it so you can build with other people, you go to collaborate, add user and groups. You just type in the name of the player. It will come up with a list of players. You select it. Let's go Jack. Let's see what comes up when we type Jack. You can make it so they can edit. They're not my friend, so obviously they can't. But yeah, then last you have file. You can open your recent games from in here. You can save your game. You can open files and close your place. You have your game settings, which just opens up this menu. And then you have your studio settings, where you can control camera speed. You can do auto recovery stuff, debugger, networks, physics, rendering, to make your game run smoother, or just have custom settings if you want. But yeah, we can hop into game settings. You have communication, permissions. You can choose if the game is public or if only friends can play. If your game isn't getting any plays, a smart thing to do is check if it's set to private. If it is, click public so other people can play it. Monetization, you can create badges, you can make it so there's paid access or private servers. And developer products are game passes and stuff like that. Security, not very important. Places, you can add more places to it. Localization, it's like all the main stuff for how your game will act in different areas. Avatar, you can choose what people's avatars spawn in as. The world, it has some presets. You can choose gravity, walk speed, and then other is just shut down all servers and enable draft mode. But that is everything in Studios. That is all the basic things you'll need. There are different things that I didn't cover, but that's because as a beginner, you won't be using them too often. I can make another tutorial for more advanced people. It won't necessarily be too necessary, I guess, because it's if they're already advanced, why do they need it? But I can always still do it. Yeah, but that's it. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.